Do you ever feel like you're in this constant tug of war between wanting to be thinner, but also knowing that every time you've gone down the dieting pathway, it's only led to food obsession, weight obsession, restriction, and a fractured relationship with your body? What happens when you know what to do to heal, but you don't do it? Or when you know what not to do, and yet you keep finding yourself doing it again? Hi, I'm Natalie Rose, and welcome back to Wake Up, the channel that helps you think less about food in your body and more about truly living. Today, I want to have a real conversation about something that comes up so often in my community coaching group, and let's be honest, in our own inner dialogue when we're on this journey of healing our relationship with food and with our bodies. Just yesterday on our group call in the community, a member shared something so honest and so relatable that even though she knows restricting food impacts her negatively, emotionally, mentally, and physically, she still found herself cutting back on carbohydrates recently. And she felt really guilty about it, not because of what she did, but because she feels like she should know better by now. Like she was doing so well and was celebrating all this progress. And then before you know it, she found herself engaging in these old patterns, and she started to question, like, have I really made any progress at all? Am I just back at the beginning? Also, because almost immediately she noticed a difference in her cycle, which threatens her ability to have kids, which is a goal of hers. So understandably, she was feeling really disappointed in herself and starting to second guess her recovery, her efforts, and whether or not she's ever going to get over this thing. Right after she shared that, another member jumped in and said, yeah, honestly, I feel like I'm constantly battling between wanting to be thinner and not wanting to have all this food noise and obsession with food, just wanting to be free. She admitted that she's been body checking more often, feeling a lot more pressure to diet because most of her friends and family are dieting, taking Ozempic, or otherwise trying to lose weight in some way. And by body checking, I mean behaviors like weighing herself, trying on old clothes that no longer fit, trying to see how much her body has changed, which overall lead to preoccupation with her body and a fixation on her weight, which is not what she wants. But let's be honest, with summertime approaching, it can be a really triggering time for body image. Anyway, then something powerful happened. There was this collective pause, and we all kind of realized that just because you know something isn't helpful, it doesn't mean that you automatically stop doing it. Let that really sink in for a second. You can know that dieting shrinks more than your body. It shrinks your joy, your energy, your sense of self-worth, your identity. And still, there are going to be moments where old behaviors sneak back in. Maybe that's standing in front of the mirror, grabbing at certain parts of your body, swearing off carbs again. Maybe it's wondering how fast you can tone up before a wedding or a social event. Maybe it's the mental math you start doing when you open up your fridge or after you see a photo of yourself that you don't like. And here's the most important part. That doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean that you've failed. It doesn't mean that you haven't made any progress in your healing journey. It doesn't mean that you haven't done enough healing or that you're not trying hard enough. It makes you human. Sometimes the pull to be quote unquote good enough for a bathing suit, for a photo, or just for your own reflection in the mirror feels stronger than all the work that you've done to unlearn those harmful beliefs that your body should look a certain way. And you're not alone in that. So let's unpack why this happens. Why do we go back to behaviors that we know aren't helpful in the long run, even if we've promised ourselves that we wouldn't? Even when we've come so far in our healing, even when we feel like we've been in recovery or on this path to healing our body image for so long? The answer, most of the time, it's not about what you know, it's about what you need. Let me say that again. It's not about what you know logically, it's about what you need emotionally. Maybe you needed familiarity. Maybe you needed to feel a little more in control. Maybe you just needed the quickest way to quiet the discomfort in your body, in your mind. Sometimes we go back to old behaviors not because they're effective in the long term, but because they're familiar and sometimes effective in some ways in the short term. For example, if you cut out carbs for a couple of days, sure, you might feel like your stomach is flatter. You might feel more toned because you shed water weight. But the next time you're invited out for pizza with friends, You're going to eat a few slices and wake up the next day feeling bloated and uncomfortable, because that's what happens when you restrict a major food group that your body needs. Therefore, restricting carbohydrates is not helpful in the long term. But making that decision helped you cope temporarily in the moment when you were feeling bad about your body, or you wanted to feel more attractive. Or maybe you haven't weighed yourself in like a year. And then all of a sudden one day you get this impulse to hop on the scale. You see the number and it totally throws you off. Maybe something happened earlier that week to make you feel insecure. Maybe you didn't get the job that you wanted. Maybe you're going through a difficult conflict with a friend or your partner, and you needed some kind of certainty that you felt like knowing that number would give you. Or you just got curious and you acted on that urge because you were feeling vulnerable, right? So instead of beating yourself up for slipping up, what if you got curious instead? What if you asked, what did I need in that moment when I stepped on the scale, or when I made that decision to cut out carbs for a couple weeks? What part of me was asking for reassurance or soothing? What would I have needed to feel safe enough to not go back to that behavior? That's the real question. That's where the real work begins. Not with rules, not with more shame, not with more willpower, but with curiosity and insight. Because so often the return to past behaviors has nothing to do with your lack of effort. It's not a moral failing. It's not because you're hopeless, lacking willpower, or just needing to try harder. It's because something in you needed something, and the old behavior was the fastest way to get you what you needed. Now, knowing this doesn't give you a pass to keep spiraling, but it does mean that you stop punishing yourself and beating yourself up, and you start offering yourself a moment of grace. Get curious. Meet yourself where you're at, because healing is not about never falling back into old patterns. It's about how you respond when it happens. Let's name a few common moments that tend to bring these behaviors up. Maybe it's seeing a photo of yourself and immediately criticizing your body, getting dressed and suddenly feeling too big in your clothes, feeling pressure to lose weight for a trip, a reunion, or a special event, or spending too much time scrolling through Instagram and comparing your body to filtered, posed images. Or could it be that you were feeling out of control emotionally and seeking comfort from food or restriction as a way to feel grounded in yourself again? Each of these moments has one thing in common: a need underneath the behavior. In fact, underneath every unwanted behavior is an unmet need. It could be a need to emotionally regulate, to de-stress, or to gain certainty. To go even deeper, you could be looking at a need to feel worthy, a need to feel accepted, a need to feel safe, a need to feel in control, a need to feel like you belong. And when those needs go unmet, your brain will pull from the past, from the most practiced pathways, from the beliefs and habits that you've spent years, maybe even decades building. But here's what's amazing. Awareness helps you rewire those pathways. Each time you pause and ask yourself, what do I need right now? You're building a new connection. Even if you don't know the answer to the question, even if you don't have any idea what you need in that moment when you have the urge to step on the scale, all that matters is that you're practicing the pause. You're helping break that link between the thought, the urge, and the emotion and the behavior. That's what's most important. You're also reminding yourself that your needs are valid and important just by reflecting on what they might be, that you can meet them with care instead of control, with nourishment instead of restriction, and with presence instead of punishment. I want to share a little personal story with you. In a Wake Up Wednesday newsletter that I sent out last week, I shared a couple photos from my recent trip to Hawaii, and I picked two in particular for a reason. My husband had snapped them while I was on the beach near the water making these little rock formations. I was totally immersed in what I was doing, not posing, not thinking about my body at all. And if I'm being really honest with you, when I first saw the photos, I didn't necessarily love how I looked. I mean, when I think about it, I must have this idea of what a pregnant woman should look like. And what I saw in the photo maybe didn't line up to that. That's usually what happens when we're criticizing ourselves in photos. Another thing is I know how my brain works, and my brain just kind of automatically picks up on flaws because it likes to have everything look aesthetic. But anyway, despite this discrepancy, seeing the photos brought a smile to my face because what I saw wasn't a body that I wanted to change. It was just me. I saw myself being present, enjoying the day, enjoying my time, having fun with this little activity, being playful, not being preoccupied with wanting to shrink or change my body, just living, just being in the moment. And I remember having fun that day and just feeling at peace. I was so happy to be on vacation. And that's the kind of freedom that I want to continue building and that I want to see you have more of. Because this work, it's not just about healing your relationship with food in your body. It's about reclaiming your life. It's about being carefree again, like I was that day on the beach. It's about being in photos, swimming in the ocean, dancing at weddings, being with your people, and not obsessing about how you look while you're doing it. That's what we do in CommunEATy. That's what I help my members achieve, to feel at home in our bodies, to catch those old patterns and respond not with shame, but with curiosity so that you can actually break the habits and move forward. Ultimately, to live and to truly live. So if this resonated with you today and you've been in a season where old behaviors have been showing up, I just want to say you are not alone. You are not failing. And I know you've heard this before, but I need to stress this again, that progress is not linear and you can shift the pattern. Start by asking yourself, what was I needing? Or what do I need in this moment? And then do your absolute best to offer yourself just that without punishment and shame. And before I go, I'll leave you with a few reflection questions that will help you get started on identifying unmet needs and breaking the habit of falling back into unwanted behaviors. The first question I want you to ask yourself is, when do I most often fall back into old patterns? Think situations, think people that you're around, think events, think seasons, think times of the day. And number two, what thoughts tend to trigger the behaviors in those situations? Are they assumptions that you're having about your body, assumptions you have about others thinking about your body, assumptions you have about food? Are they emotions, feelings that you feel at that time that prompt those behaviors? Number three, what do you wish you could feel in those moments? When you're about to step on the scale, even though you know that it could be triggering, what are you hoping to feel when you get there, when you see that number? And number four, how can you offer yourself a similar feeling in a more nourishing way that doesn't threaten to trigger you or doesn't threaten your healing journey? In what other ways can you go about meeting needs such as validation, acceptance, love, intimacy, joy? And lastly, what could it be like to respond to yourself in these moments with curiosity instead of criticism, or in the moments when you have already slipped up and you're feeling badly about it? Because again, it's not about never slipping up. It's about how you respond to yourself when it happens. And if you're not already signed up for my weekly Wake Up Wednesday newsletter, you'll find the link in the show notes. Every week, I send out a quick note to offer a little dose of self-discovery, encouragement, and growth. I'd love to connect with you there. In the meantime, thank you for listening or watching this on YouTube, and we'll see you next week.